Hello, good evening. Welcome to our webinar rather, tonight, Surrogacy and Egg Donation in the USA for German intended parents. First of all, I would like to thank you for joining us tonight. We will have a total of 4 speakers. We will start with the speakers from City Fertility, who will be Dr. Mel Thornton, our medical director, followed by Dr. Joao de Pino, who is the fertility specialist. And this will be followed by Mindy Bergson from Lotus Blossom Consulting, that is a surrogacy agency based in Dallas in the USA. And finally, we will have attorney Holger Eberlein, who is the specialist in family law in Germany. I would like to ask you all to please if you have any questions, keep them until the end. When all the speakers have finished, you will be able to write your questions in the chat box, and then I will give the floor to the relevant speaker to answer your question. Thank you very much. I'm going to give the floor, first of all, to the first speaker, who is Dr. Mel Thornton, Medical Director, and see if he's able to connect and start the webinar tonight. Thank you.
Not sure if you can hear me or not. It looks like I'm having a few technical difficulties. If you can't hear me, then I'll let Dr. DePino go ahead. All is good. Okay, so Dr. DePino said all is good. So we're going to go ahead and proceed. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar. I hope that you find this webinar very informative, and we'd like to answer any questions that you have at the end of the webinar. So first, my name is Dr. Melvin Thornton, and I'm the medical director here at CT Fertility. CT Fertility is located with our main laboratory offices in Connecticut. Our IVF laboratory is about an hour and 25 minutes from New York City. We also have a consultation office located in New York City, as well as a consultation office in Barcelona. Today, what we like to do is give you an overview of surrogacy in the United States. With surrogacy in the United States, there are 2 partners involved, the IVF clinic as well as the surrogacy agency. We both work hand in hand and always considered as a partnership between the IVF clinic, the surrogacy agency, and the intended parents. So what I'd like to focus on this afternoon is, what does the IVF clinic do? So with the IVF clinic, we focus on helping you create your embryos, helping you find your egg donor, as well as creating your embryos and freezing your embryos for future transfers to your gestational carrier. In addition to that, we also screen your gestational carrier to make sure that she is an excellent candidate to help you have the successful journey. So I'd like to focus on first the egg donation. And here at CT Fertility, we have our own egg donor database. We have approximately close to 200 egg donors in our database, and of those 200 donors in the database, approximately 160 to 170 of these donors are actively and ready to donate. It seems like I'm having some difficulty with the audio, so let me see here what we can do. Looks like my sound is all the way up and I'm very close to the computer. So what we'll do is that we'll go ahead and continue. When you're looking at your egg donor, there are 2 different types of egg donors. You're going to see anonymous egg donors, and what that means is that this is an egg donor that you know all the information about, but she won't share any your information with her. She's completely anonymous. Under that category of anonymous, you can actually meet your donor, you can actually Skype with your donor, or do a conference call with her as well. The non-anonymous, or what we call a directed egg donor, in this case, this is someone that you'll know full demographics for each of you, And this requires a contract. And what this means is that with the contract, this is someone, if you want your donor to meet your future children in the future, then this would require a directed egg donation as well as a contract. Here at CT Fertility, our donors are thoroughly screened and vetted to make sure they are excellent candidates and have that excellent potential to be successful for you. They undergo a full profile, which includes their likes and dislikes, their personal assays. We have photographs of the donors from when they are a baby to the adult life. As far as the medical screening, they undergo a
Dr. Thornton, we are having some messages from the interpreters that they are having difficulty to hear you well, to translate, because the sound quality is not very good. I wonder if there is a microphone or something that you can use. Otherwise, I'm going to give the floor momentarily to Dr. Joao de Pino, who is going to talk to us a little more about this light on the screen, and then we will revert to you again and see if we can get slightly better sound quality. Thank you very much. Dr. Joao de Pino, the floor is yours.
I hope everyone can hear me well, especially the interpreters. Just taking over what Mel was saying regarding the egg donors, they do a complete medical screening. They touch base before they are ever put in our database. We do a full medical examination on them, but more importantly, we do also a fertility screening on her, which will go and have to do with blood tests and also an ultrasound to see the number of follicles. That will give us a perspective on how well she will do for our intended parents. We also do a very thorough screening on the infectious diseases that they will need. We do a physical, but we also do a social assessment on important criteria, means on things about their past, on things about their medical history, what they have done and what they would want to do in the future, so that the intended parents can see not only the physical side, be assured that they are going to perform very well during their cycle, but they can also have more personal interaction with them even throughout seeing just the profile. Regarding the reserve that they have and the assessment of the most important factor being very pragmatic, which is the number of follicles that they will have available for the cycle that we're going to do, and that will be transformed then into embryos. That is an assessment that we usually do in the first 3 days of a woman's menstrual cycle. Alongside with an ultrasound, we do hormonal testing, such as you can see there, the FSH. Counting all those follicles that you can see on the monitor gives us a perspective of at least a baseline that we would be expecting for her to do well, or how well she will even respond to medication. An egg donor has certain criteria that are important for us to know, and usually often intended parents say, what are the best criteria for us to have for a donor? I think age is one of the most important factors. Most of our donors are going to be between the ages of 20, less than 30. I would say that most of them will live between 20, 25 years old, or even 27 years old. It's important that they are not overweight, because the more overweight, the less response. And of course, not being a smoker is important because it would decrease the chances. So that all evaluation that was done before for the criteria that you see there on the left as a good medical history without any problems had been already screened. Also, not to forget, and just a point ahead, is the screening of the surrogates can be as important as the screening of a donor. Besides of the fact that we already knew much of information on the donor, such as her genetic information even, and if there is any problems with the compatibility with the intended parents, the surrogates also get a screening. And that screening is done in a full 3-event way, which happens in this sequence. If you're already with an agency, they will usually contact the clinic and us as medical doctors, physicians, for us to screen the previous history and if this would be a good candidate for you as intended parents. The second event is if they actually pass that screening process and we agree that that would be a possibility, you then usually meet the gestational carrier and agree upon the proceeding of her continued screening. She will come for a full day in the clinic, and we will do a complete physical examination so that we can know a little bit more about the history. And we actually even see the inside of the interior of her uterus, as you can see there in what we call a sonohistogram. We make sure that there is no polyps, no fibroids that would be a decrease on probably more than 1/3 of a pregnancy rate if we wouldn't do otherwise. There's also a social consult done by our social workers, and our nurses will also make sure that they understand all the medication and go over the calendar. So we make sure that the gestational carrier is very comfortable in going through a cycle with the medication and when she's going to do the transfer. Just for you to notice in the image that you have there of a uterus, and you can see it that inside of the uterus there is a dark part of the cavity that is actually represents fluid, and in there is a round shaped ball that represents a polyp. A polyp is a growth that can occur in women at any stage in time, and we need to know about it because that would decrease the possibilities of pregnancy. But also important is for us to understand if they have any medical history, and we also will test their blood for many of the things that are important, such as their hormones. And this will increase our chances for a good outcome. Now, we've done the part, or we've understood the part about the donor, also the gestational carrier, but the intended parent and the male option is going to also be tested and screened. This can be because you're an intended parent. This can be because you're choosing someone to be the person that will be giving the source of sperm. And in that case, here in the United States, we do what we call the FDA, the same thing that was done for the donor. The Federal and Drug Administration require us to do some not only general screening with a completely physical examination also done on the male side, but also to do an infections panel where we cover all the diseases that you can see there. And we collect a sample on that day. If the intended parent sometimes will want to leave a sample over there with us on the day that is doing the physical examination, as what we call for a backup sample. So we're doing not only a semen analysis, but we are collecting that sample that could be used later on. And that's very, very frequently, avoiding the issue of us having to do sometimes a fresh collection when the intended parents cannot be at our clinic for whatever kind of motif, either because they're too far or because it's more convenient actually, and it actually does not decrease the chances for fertility and having a good outcome as long as the quality of the sperm itself is good. The IVF process then comes about, means everyone is screened, everyone is ready, and the woman will get a stimulation protocol where her eggs are going to be develop and increase in size and in maturity, approximately 10 days of stimulation that will occur. And after 2 days, after that stimulation, on the 12th to 14th day, we do often the retrieval of those eggs so that we will be able to create embryos and inseminate them with sperm. The insemination, there's two ways to do it. One is we just leave there the sperm surrounding and swimming around the eggs, and they will fertilize. But for that, there is a very inefficient method in nature which will require millions of them, and the rates for fertilization are about 50%. We have what we call ICSI, that stands for short as intracytoplasmatic sperm injection. It means a big name to say something very simple, which is we pick the best looking sperm and we are going to inject it inside of the egg. And that will create a better possibility for a fertilization rate or fertility of that egg. I'm going to now let Dr. Melvin Thornton take over for the remainder of the slides so that he can go over the remaining of the process for IVF. I think that's the plan.
Hear me perfectly fine. Dr. DePino has explained the initial steps for the in vitro fertilization process, and what I'd like to do is walk you through the remainder of the process, as well as talk to you about how many embryos we like to transfer and some of our latest technologies such as pre-implantation genetic screening. So Dr. DePino mentioned how we retrieve the eggs and how we get the eggs to fertilize. And what happens, that you can see in this slide here, is that when we have a couple with a split sperm source, we pretty much take half the eggs that are mature and use the sperm for each partner. So in the slide here, you can see the example of one partner who's labeled number 1, where there were 10 eggs that were fertilized with his sperm, and then the other 10 eggs are fertilized with partner number 2. Once these eggs undergo the ICSI procedure, where we inject the sperm into the egg, we allow them to develop, and we allow these embryos to develop on a regular, look at them on the basis of day 3, as well as what we call day 5 or blastocysts. In this slide here, you can see that the embryos are developing nicely at the day 3 stage, and then you can see that we assess them again on morphology number 5, as well as morphology number 6. The most important embryo that develops is called a blastocyst, and this is a picture of a blastocyst, which is separated into 2 parts of the embryo. One part, called the inner cell mass, will become the actual baby, and then the other cells, the trifecta, will become the placenta. So in this example here in the slide, you'll see that we're able to freeze very healthy embryos that are graded A and Bs at the blastocyst stage. So when we develop these blastocysts, we will select either 1 embryo or 2 embryo for transfer, which I'll discuss with you in a second how many we actually transfer. The transfer is a procedure that's done on what we call an outpatient procedure. The gestational carrier comes in the day before the transfer. The following day, she undergoes a transfer. We place a small catheter to her uterus, as you can see in the picture, and then using ultrasound guidance, we transfer 1 or 2 embryos into her uterus. And then 10 to 12 days after the transfer, she returns for a pregnancy test. There's different types of cycles that we offer here at CT Fertility. One type of cycle is called a full cycle, and what that means is that you get all the eggs. We have split donor cycles, and what that means is that if the donor makes 30 eggs, one couple will get 15 eggs, and then the other couple will get 15 eggs as well. The advantage to the split cycles is that it lowers the cost of the overall journey. The ideal person to undergo a split donor egg cycle would be someone who's a single sperm source. If you have a dual sperm source, it'd be very difficult to do a split donor cycle because the number of eggs are decreased compared to having all the eggs to yourself. So the only time that we do recommend someone for a split donor cycle is if they're using an ideals, a single sperm source. In the U.S., there's been an increasing trend to transfer only 1 embryo, and that trend has been increasing since since about 2009, 2010. And the whole goal of doing single embryo transfers is to reduce the risk of multiples on gestation. And if you do transfer 1 embryo, the risk of twins is about 1 to 2%. In this graph that you see here is that when we talk about blastocysts, these are very healthy blastocysts. And if we do dual embryo transfers and result in multiple gestations such as twins, there's risk for the mother as well as for the actual baby itself. The risk for the mother includes things such as high blood pressure in the pregnancy, diabetes in the pregnancy, as well as bleeding issues in the pregnancy. And for the baby, there's a risk of prematurity, which could result in cerebral palsy or central nervous system abnormalities or lung complications and stomach complications as well. So in the U.S., we do like to do single embryo transfers. If you look at this graph, this is the single embryo transfer versus dual embryo transfer. What you'll see is that the overall live birth rates in a well-selected embryo with a single embryo transfer is the same success rate as if you're transferring two embryos. The only difference, if you look at the graph on the right-hand side in the blue, there's about a 30 to 40% chance of having twins if you transfer two. And if we do transfer two embryos and do result in twins, what you'll see is that the risk of prematurity in the twin group is almost 20%. And this is where the complications in the baby as well as the mother can occur. The next thing is for an IVF cycle that we'd like to discuss is going to be fresh versus frozen. The most important things that you've heard a lot about frozen embryos, if you're a CT Fertility and throughout the United States, IVF programs are moving towards frozen embryos. The reason for this is because of our new freezing technique called vitrification. It allows for frozen embryos to have higher implantation rates. They have the same success rate as far as pregnancy and live birth rate compared to fresh embryos. But the most important thing is all the studies throughout the world have been showing a decrease in miscarriage rate as well as a lower risk for preterm labor or healthier babies when you're working with frozen embryos. The other advantage of using the frozen embryo that allows for easier synchronization of the cycle. With the fresh cycle, it involves having the egg donor, the gestational carrier, as well as the sperm source. But with a frozen embryo cycle, all we have to worry about is the gestational carrier or the recipient mother. Here, the logistics are very easy. We just prepare her uterus, and what you see on the slide to the left-hand side, this is your uterus, and the arrow is pointing to a very thin lining that's not been prepared for the transfer. With the gestational carrier, we give her hormones to prepare the lining of the uterus. In the slide to the right, you can see that the lining there is nice and thick and ready for implantation. So it allows for logistically a better cycle as well as giving a better to the same outcomes compared to the fresh embryos. Other things that are exciting in our field is something called pre-implantation genetic screening. You may also hear it as comprehensive chromosomal screening. And this is an important development that we do here at CT Fertility because as you look in the column here, if you have women who are young egg donors and you look under the microscope and you say this is a very healthy looking embryo, there's a 30% chance that that embryo will be chromosomally abnormal. And the chromosomal abnormal embryos either don't implant or can lead to miscarriage or things such as Down syndrome. So here at CT Fertility, we do the pre-implantation genetic screening where we look to make sure that the embryo is a normal chromosomal embryo. So what you see in the example here, that this is a normal embryo. The green line is nice and straight all the way across. And in embryos that have extra or less chromosomes, you can see the difference here is that morphologically the embryo looks very normal, but the results of the genetic screening have come back to show that this embryo has too many chromosomes and either won't be successful as transferred or it could lead to a miscarriage if the embryo was transferred. So this embryo here would not be selected for transfer. So when we talk about pre-implantation genetic screening, it allows us to select the best embryo for transfer. This is why when we look at single embryo transfers versus double embryo transfers, the success rates are the same because we're able to select the best embryo that will lead to success. By knowing the chromosomes are normal, reduces the risk of miscarriage, also reduces the risk of abnormal pregnancies such as Down syndrome. In addition, allows for family balancing with the chromosome numbers as well. And finally, let's just finish off with some exciting things going on here at CT Fertility. We're always trying to find the best embryo to be successful with, and there's new technology called mitochondrial testing. And the idea behind mitochondrial testing is that if an embryo has too much of the mitochondria, it may not be allowed to implant. And when the embryo has a little mitochondria, it has more energy, so it allows for implantation. So what you see here is that in the graph, embryos that have an elevated mitochondrial grade, the implantation rates are lower compared to embryos that have a lower mitochondrial grade. So here at CT Fertility, we do mitochondrial testing to help us select the best embryo for transfer. So by doing blastocyst transfers, pre-implantation genetic screening, as well as the mitochondrial testing, it allows us to select the healthiest embryo for transfer to give you the best success for a successful journey. Thank you.
Dr. Mel Thornton and Dr. Joao De Pino. We're going to have next Mindy Bergson, who is the director of the surrogacy agency Lotus Blossom Consulting. Thank you very much, Mindy.
Thank you. And thank you all for organizing this important webinar. I'm honored to be on the stage with Dr. Thornton, De Pino, and of course, my Hogar Eberling. So thank you all very much. I hope you'll bear with me as I look down on my notes just to make sure that I have everything I need to say to you accomplished. And I do have to confess, it is a little bit weird talking into a machine and not being able to see your audience, but I will do the very best that I could do. There we go. Juan, I'm not seeing my presentation on the screen. Oh, there we go. So I thought I'd start out first by sharing a little bit about Lotus Blossom, who I am, how I started the company. The company was actually founded in 2005. It was based on my experience 20 years ago as a patient in the infertility world. Lo and behold, I had a baby and no problems, no issues with fertility. But a year and a half later, I struggled with secondary infertility and spent 3.5 years going through infertility treatment, trying to conceive my now 20-year-old twins. At that time, what I learned as a patient was that the answers I was getting were only as good as the questions I was asking. But the problem was I didn't know what questions to ask, and navigating the world of infertility was a bit difficult. What I did learn from that 3.5-year experience was that I had a true passion for this industry. And as such, after my twins were born, I started working as an egg donor and surrogate recruiter on a nationwide basis. So I learned the industry from the agency perspective. I spent about 7-8 years doing that, and then 2 years as an IVF coordinator where I was coordinating medication cycles for third-party reproduction in the fertility centers. My original background was as a venture capitalist, and in 2005, when I opened Lotus Blossom, the opening was based on my experience from the venture capital world, knowing how to write a business plan, my experience as a patient, the need that I felt for a patient advocate, and then my experience working in the industry. My mission in 2005 was to be the advocate for the intended parents who are navigating this very personal experience, and today my mission hasn't changed. I know it's very difficult to choose an agency, and so today I want to point out for you my agency philosophy and how I differ from the typical agency. As I mentioned, I am the advocate for the intended parent. My role is to pull together a completely unbiased team of multidisciplinary professionals. Well, what does that mean? Unbiased attorneys, unbiased licensed insurance specialists, unbiased psychologists, doctors, embryologists, everything that goes into a surrogacy arrangement that really helps you increase your chances of success. And in the past 12 years, I have built networks all over the country with these professionals. And there is no cookie cutter case for me. So I rely on these professionals to help me, and I choose different professionals for each individual circumstance that I'm working with. I don't believe in list matching surrogates with intended parents. And what I mean by list matching is a surrogate becomes available or recently recruited, and then the agency takes the next client on the list and makes a match. To me, matching is a very personal process. It must be specific to individual criteria. And I really focus on being able to share with my clients a number of profiles, hopefully 6 to 10 profiles that closely meet your criteria, closely meet your legal needs, and give you the opportunity to really hone in on who are the ideal candidates. I'll ask you to narrow your choices to the top 2 or 3 candidates, and then I do what I call my compare and contrast process. I talk to you about the candidates, their personalities, their needs, their support systems. We talk about your needs, what you're looking for in a pregnancy, and do you want a surrogate to terminate in the unlikely event of a chromosomal abnormality? Do you want to transfer 1 or 2 embryos? Is the surrogate willing to carry twins? So the matching process is very specific to your needs. There's also tertiary decision-making tools in the matching process that I like to use in this compare and contrast process. For example, do costs make one candidate more favorable over another? Does location? If you tell me you want to carry twins, what hospital is she going to deliver at? And is there a neonatal intensive care unit that's rated top level? So these are things that we work together through the matching process. Once you hone in on who really is the ideal candidate, then I like to put all parties on a phone call or a Skype call. It's a first name only basis, so there's no obligation to work with the surrogate. But it is an opportunity to bring the paper profile to life and to really determine if this is somebody you feel you could trust for the next 12 to 14 months, because we are working together for a rather lengthy period of time. So once we have the phone call, if that's a girl that you really want to work with, off phone call, I will negotiate a fee schedule for you. And before I solidify any match, I want to make certain that you have realistic expectations about the finances for that particular candidate, the insurance, and all of the things that are going to eventually be incorporated into the legal contract between you and the surrogate, all parties mutually agree upon. I also like to point out that at Lotus Blossom, we don't have onerous contracts. My contract clearly states that if a surrogate does not pass psychological or medical clearance, I will find you a new candidate at no additional cost. So I guarantee you a vetted, medically cleared surrogate. A few other differentiators at Lotus Blossom: we have one flat fee for identification of surrogate and case management. As I mentioned, we guarantee you this medically cleared surrogate, and there are no additional match fees. Because I have a larger proprietary network than the typical agency, my match times tend to be much shorter. They're about 2 weeks as compared to about 4 to 8 months. Most important to me is making a like-minded match that is truly suited to your individual criteria as well as your legal needs. So speaking of legal, surrogacy laws vary greatly from state to state. Some states have pre-birth orders, some states have post-birth orders. As you know, German clients have other issues to consider based on the restrictive surrogacy laws in Germany. And I'm sure you've heard that Germans must only use single or unmarried surrogates. Well, the real issue with matching German clients is more about whether you have private German insurance that could cover the baby's medical bills in the U.S. after birth. If this is truly the case, then it's better for clients to have an unmarried surrogate. so that that surrogate can then sign a pre-birth acknowledgement of paternity at the nearest German consulate, which will allow the German biological dad to be recognized under German law as the father even before the birth. And then when the baby is born, the medical bills can go to the private German insurance. Now, if German clients do not have private German insurance or don't want to use it, then it really doesn't matter whether the surrogate is married or single. But another important consideration when I'm matching my German clients is that they need to be matched in a state that has a court order process in obtaining the birth certificate. So since the laws vary so widely across the US, it is imperative to identify an appropriate match and a favorable state with each circumstance taken into careful consideration. So if the laws aren't overwhelming enough, then the medical treatment, seeking medical treatment abroad isn't overwhelming enough. We then have the US health insurance system to deal with. And health insurance in the US, as you can imagine, over the past couple of years has been changing. Given the new Trump regime, we don't know how it's going to change again in the future. But currently, there still are health insurance options available for surrogacy. And I also want to clarify that surrogates typically have their own health insurance. The issue is more about their current insurance policy having exclusions to surrogacy. And I find this in the case of about 98% of surrogates who do have their own insurance, they have surrogacy exclusions. But we do have options for health insurance. Those health insurance options financially vary greatly. The biggest difference is whether it's a single twin pregnancy or a twin pregnancy. Another consideration with regards to insurance is insurance for the newborns. And as we previously talked about, with private German insurance, that could be one option. But for clients who don't have this private insurance, there currently are options in most states to obtain child-only policies after birth. In order to do this, we need a child's name, a birth date, a social security number. It typically takes about 2 weeks to secure the insurance after birth, but the policy will be retroactive to the date of birth. Most important is that during the pregnancy and prior to this birth date, there are certain requirements that we need to meet in order to be eligible to apply for the insurance. So this is always something that I work closely with on my clients at about the 6th, 7th month of pregnancy. The estimated costs of surrogacy are typically about $100,000 to $110,000 all in, plus the cost of the medical portion. At Lotus, we have one flat fee for the identification of the surrogate and the case management fee. And I want to also point out that this one flat fee includes the following expenses that are paid on behalf of the surrogate. The first is the recruiter fee. Now, the recruiter doesn't get paid until the surrogate actually passes medical clearance and psychological screening. So once again, if there is an issue with the surrogate, there is no rematch fee to you. You are guaranteed a qualified medically cleared surrogate. Fees also paid on behalf of the surrogate include criminal background verifications for her and her partner, psychological evaluations, the surrogate's attorney fee. We purchase a life insurance policy on every surrogate. And I like to put my clients on consultations with at least 1 or 2 health insurance agents so that we really understand individual clients' risk aversity for purchasing insurance and how the insurance is truly going to mitigate financial medical expenditures. Finally, the escrow management fee. There's an escrow account that is set up to pay the surrogate. The account gets funded prior to the surrogate's start of medication, and the surrogate then gets paid monthly over the term of the pregnancy. Other estimated costs include intended parents' attorney fees. These fees vary per state. A national average of cost is about $11,000. This cost includes the drafting of the contract, but it also includes the court proceedings per state and obtaining the birth certificate and social security numbers after birth. We talked about health insurance a little bit. Health insurance is available. Premiums typically start at about $12,000, and costs then are determined whether or not this is going to be a singleton pregnancy or a twin pregnancy. Surrogates compensation varies as well. A first-time surrogate, a national average cost is about $30,000, and previous surrogates compensation can go as high as about $50,000. Realistic expectations, I always like to clarify this with intended parents. Once a surrogate is identified, which is typically that 2-week match period that I had spoke about previously, it typically takes about 3 to 4 months to get to embryo transfer from that point. During this time period, I'm working on psychological evaluations, arranging that for the surrogates. I'm working with the Fertility Center on medical screening and getting medical clearance. And once we have medical clearance, we then work on the legal contract. So the legal contract is, it typically takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get a fully executed contract. Simultaneously, I'm working on securing health insurance for the surrogate, and then the establishment of the escrow account, which I mentioned, that pays the over the course of the pregnancy. In summary, the pathway to parenthood can be very challenging, and primarily because there are so many variables that go into a surrogacy arrangement and so many things to orchestrate in a timely fashion. And unfortunately, there's no guarantee for one cycle. So I'm always working with my clients and on encouraging them to balance hope with caution, emotionally, physically, and financially. But the work we do together to identify surrogates and plan budgets and implement the timing of the cycle, they're all essential to successfully accomplishing a surrogacy arrangement. So I hope this information was helpful to you all, and I want to say thank you all for your time and attention. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Mindy, for your wonderful presentation. Yes, we will have time for questions at the end. Once we have listened to attorney Holger Eberlein's presentation, who is joining us now from Berlin. So the floor is over to you, Holger. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'd like to welcome you all. I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Holger Eberlein. As you have found out, I'm a lawyer based in Berlin, and I'm specialized in family law and medical law. I represent the Physicians Federal Association of Reproductive Medicine here in Germany. So I'm an expert in the Health Committee of the Federal Parliament of Germany as well. So we've had excellent medical input in the previous presentations. Thank you for that. So I'd like to give an insight into the legal aspects of reproductive medicine in Germany. As you may well know, we are quite limited compared with other countries in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed. I would like to first of all focus on the legal treatments, and then I will also focus later on embryo donation and surrogacy. So the legal background, these are general laws, the German Civil Code, the German Penal Code, and then there are special legal regulations, the ESCHG. This is the Embryo Protection Law, which is very difficult for us. It's a very old law from 1990. So from the early days of reproductive medicine, as it were, and unfortunately it was never adapted to the current situation. Politically, this seems to be difficult to actually meet today's needs of parents, like those who might be listening. And the last one is the professional code of physicians. They have their own professional codes. Physicians in the 16 different states of Germany, they're governed by the local chambers and not necessarily the same in all 16 states. So which treatment methods are allowed? We have hormonal stimulation, we have insemination, IVF, straightforward, and ICSI, which we've heard something about before from our medical experts. Then certain technologies as part of these treatments are allowed as well. Cryopreservation of eggs and sperm cells, polar body diagnostics, pre-implantation genetic screening, but only with certain restrictions because of the embryo protection law, prolonged cultivation, so blastocyst cultures, cultivation where the embryos are extracorporally allowed to develop. We have a so-called German compromise, which means you can't do this in an unlimited fashion. So you estimate the failure rate so that you can prolong the cultivation of the embryo for about 6 to 8. Then we have the embryoscope, which is also allowed under the German compromise. You must make sure you don't take too many embryos for that one. Then we have the treatments with donors' sperm, which is allowed. And other treatment technologies are allowed. There's a lot here that I'm not going to read out. There's a lot of things you can do to accompany the basic treatment regardless of whether it is actually medically effective or not. So the question always is, will the healthcare insurer reimburse? So sperm donation, generally speaking, is allowed in Germany, but normally not with anonymous donors. The reason being that we have an obligation of the sites to keep donor dates for 30 years, and the child that is produced has a right then to find out the name of the donor from the semen bank or the physician. So who's the natural dad, the biological dad? The treatment is allowed for married couples, unmarried couples, lesbian couples as well. But you have to check what the individual professional codes of the different German states allow for. There is a lot of variation here. Single women can also be treated, but again there are restrictions in terms of the physicians' professional codes. Certain treatments are prohibited, however, and this is what matters here. So the donation of eggs is not allowed. Surrogacy is not allowed. These treatments do happen. I'll come back to that in a second. You need to pay attention to certain points. So these are criminal offences based on the embryo protection law. This applies to the physician, not the parents. They might be fined with, or even have to go to court, to prison. And in Germany, we have a specific problem. If you support illegal treatments, you will be penalized as well if the treatment is carried out abroad, where it is allowed. So, for instance, if abroad, in a different country, an egg cell is donated, and this is supported by a German physician, let's say ultrasound is carried out by them, they will be punished, but the mother will not be punished. But you have to be careful. So, for instance, family members who might support you, who might drive you to another country for that donation, they may also be committing criminal offences by supporting you in that way. Apart from that, from the egg donation, there are very few problems because as sperm donors, we have the actual dad, the actual father. In Germany, the mother who's given birth is officially the mother, so the mother who carries the child, who receives the donation, so that is not a problem. When it comes to surrogacy, we have a lot of problems, however. Generally speaking, surrogacy is illegal based on the embryo protection law, which expresses again that physicians may be punished. The couple that has ordered the surrogate will not be punished, and neither will the surrogate herself be punished. For a child that was born outside of Germany, of course, it will matter mainly that the sperm of one of the parents who have ordered, as it were, was used for production, and the surrogate must be single, unmarried. So if the surrogate was to be married, that would be very complicated. That's all I can say. The father so if the surrogate is pregnant, the father can go to a consulate abroad and apply for recognition of the pregnancy. That's no problem at all. It's not even a problem if someone who does it who didn't donate the semen, because when you declare that you are the father, you do not state that you're the biologic father, you just state that you want to be the father of that child, biological or not. German legislation accepts courts' decisions from abroad because the family law might be different in different countries. So, for instance, there was a case of precedence of the Federal Supreme Court in Germany, which was to do with a child that was created in California with an unmarried woman, and the Californian court found that the two desired parents, two men actually, are the legal parents of the child, not the surrogate. This was accepted by the German courts. Apart from that, if the dad who has donated the sperm, then the child must come to Germany quickly once it's born, because the nationality will depend on the permanent residence of the child, and the other partner can then be an adopted stepchild if this is in the benefit of the child, which is what it normally is, because it no longer has a real mother. The child can then be adopted.
So the special rules are different in different countries, but you know what is really important here is that you have to pay attention that when you are in Germany, and if you if you advertise in Germany, this is not allowed, but foreign practices and clinics can take part in trade shows and can inform and can also distribute flyers, prospects, but they really have to pay attention that they don't conclude contracts, and they can do some advertising. That's all right. So just a quick overview regarding the health insurance. The German health insurance only have to pay what is allowed in Germany. So when you look at the public health insurance, which is 90% of Germans, that they're obliged to be insured there. There the fertility treatment is slightly has a special status there. So it's a bit. It was considered to be something like plastic surgery at the time. So therefore. There are quite a lot of limits if you look at it. So things such as only heterosexual couples who are married can have this covered, and the woman cannot be older than 40 years old and the man not older than 50 years old, and there is quite a lot of limits. And you can only have 3 cycles, and that's it. However, then you can start again if there is a problem. But however, with the private, it's different. It's only 10% of Germans are privately insured, and there it is considered fertility treatment is considered as a proper treatment. So if you look, so if there is a success chance of at least 15%, then they can move on with it. You can also get be covered if you're not married, if you're homosexual, if you're a single parent or a single female parent. There are no age limits or any other limits regarding the cycles. So therefore, with the private health insurance, there was a case with the Supreme Court at the moment, the Federal Supreme Court in Germany, and there was a case where the person was trying to get the money from the health insurance, and the lower courts rejected it, and there was a low chance that you will be covered because of the Supreme Court ruled this way. However, if we have we're quite lucky, then with the surrogacy, probably the private health insurance could pay if the father is sterile. So if there is no natural way to conceive, then there is probably a good chance that you will get you will be covered. So thank you very much for listening to me. This is quite a broad field, and there are quite a lot of questions, and I'm sure this could go on for hours and hours to answer all the questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Holger, for this presentation. We have a first question for you actually on the screen. This is from Maria, who is asking about insurance. How about male partners? So over to you, Holger. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank. Ich habe ein Problem mit meinem Mikrofon. Können Sie bitte die Frage wiederholen? Ich habe das jetzt gerade nicht verstanden.
Yes, there is actually on the screen on the chat channel. If you select chat channel on general, you will be on the general channel for the public to put their questions. And Maria is written in there. Question about insurance. How about male partners? And this question is for Holger. So over to Holger. Thank you.
Dank. Sie haben jetzt gefragt, wie sieht es mit den männlichen Partnern aus? Können Sie das bitte spezifizieren, die Frage? Es ist nicht wirklich klar, was Sie wissen möchten.
Holger, I think that the question from Maria maybe is not clear. I don't know if Maria, you can write the question again. Oh, I see. So Maria is saying that the answers you gave for insurance were all for females. I don't know if that question is clear enough, Holger. Otherwise, we will go to the next one.
Well, I think that this is only concerning the private health insurance. So when there is a sterility problem with a man, then if the federal court will make a decision that such an egg donation can be covered by the health insurance, but it has to be the permitted methods, and if both are sick, then there are parallel entitlements, and then they can choose who is going to get the coverage. So I hope that this has answered the question a little bit at least.
I don't know if you can see the next question is also for you. It's from Johannes. He's writing on the general channel, and I think it's better if we all write on the general channel now, so we can all read the same and make it easier. And Johannes is writing here a question for attorney Eberlein. Thank you, Holger.
Vielen Dank, Holger. Yes, I have read the question. The problem with married women is that usually after German law, the father is it's really the father who is married to the woman. He's recognized as the father. So there are quite a lot of complicated ways to fight for paternity. So if one of the partners is on the list for the surrogate, then we will have to contest the paternity and then also go before the court as well. There is no other way of doing it.
I'm not sure if Holger was answering to Tobias or he was answering to Johannes, but I'll copy the question from Johannes here again, just in case. And then we also have a question from Daniel. I don't know if you can answer those questions as well. Thank you, Holger.
This depends on what's happening to the child. If you want to take it back to Germany straight away, and then in Germany you want to have the paternity recognized, and then if you would like to have it insured, and then see whether the health insurance will pay, and it's a set fee, and you're doing it correctly. If a child is staying for a certain period of time in the U.S., especially since it's going to be U.S. citizen, since it's born over there. So I think that was Daniel's question.
Thank you very much, Holger. If I could ask the audience maybe to write to whom is addressed the question, because sometimes it's not completely clear. But I can see that there is a question here for the agency in the USA. This would be for Mindy Bergson, and this is a question from Daniel. Okay, it seems that Mindy Bergson is not online, so I think there was a technical problem there. I will get her back on the floor as soon as she logs back in. Let me see, there's a question here for City Fertility from Johannes. And this is for either Dr. Thornton or Dr. De Pino. So let's see, Dr. Thornton.
Good question, but a complicated question. When you're working with a surrogate, you want to maximize your chances of being successful. So the first thing we ask is the age of the female who's providing the eggs. And if she is young and healthy, it's better to undergo a regular IVF cycle and create multiple eggs, which will lead to a better outcome than trying to do a natural cycle. By doing a natural cycle, it involves multiple visits to the clinic to retrieve one potential egg. In order to be successful, you may have to go through multiple cycles to get to the healthiest egg. So we prefer to do the IVF process in a routine fashion with stimulating hormones to have your wife make as many potential good quality eggs as she can, depending upon her age.
I'm trying to scroll up in the questions because trying to recover some of the earlier questions. Daniel is saying, sorry, my question was to Holger as a follow-up to the first question. And then he's saying, I don't know if Holger, you can see the question from Daniel. I'm going to copy and paste that in the window so that you can read it. There we go. Thank you, Holger.
Yes, Daniel, you asked a question. When the child is in Germany, in the incubator, and the fatherhood has been established, then later on, within 3 years at least, you can get the cost for the incubator treatment in the USA reimbursed from the health insurance. I hope that has now answered the question. It just would not be possible if for a longer period of time the child was to stay in the States. I don't know what your plans are. Danke.
From Werner for Dr. Thornton, and he's asking what are the risks of the PGS for the embryos. So Dr. Thornton, please.
Less than 1% risk of having any type of damage to the embryo. The reason for this is because we only sample a few cells from the cells that will become the placenta. We do not touch the cells that become the actual baby. So when you're working with young, healthy embryos, the risk of any type of damage to the embryo is less than 1%. However, as women get older, the embryos become more fragile. So if I have a patient who's in her 40s and she's undergoing PGS, the risk of damaging the embryo may be about 1 to 2% maximum. And that's just because of the age of the egg that created the embryo. But overall, the risk of damage to the embryo is less than 1%.
Dr. Thornton. Okay, I see that there is a question for Mindy Bergson. Okay, and Mindy Bergson just came back online. So, Mindy, I can see a question here from Catherine, right? So, she's asking, the cost is approx $100,000 plus hospital costs. How high these costs are approximately, she's asking. So over to you, Mindy. Sorry, I think Mindy just came offline again. She was online a second ago. I think she's having some technical difficulties with her computer. So whichever question cannot be answered on this webinar, I mean, you have the contact details on the screen. And of course, you're welcome to reach out to any of the speakers via email or phone and ask your questions. Let's see if Mindy can come back online, and then I can put that question over to her again. Otherwise, I have here a question from Johannes for Dr. DePino or Dr. Thornton. Let's see, Dr. DePino, if you can answer this question from Johannes. Thank you.
That is good. This is a very good question, which we frequently work with other states. Means frequently, it's almost a rule. Very few, actually, of our patients or intended parents, or even surrogates when it's that the case, or even donors. Sometimes we work as close as a few miles down the block, and more frequently so actually out of the state. For the intended parents, it's usually a visit that you have to do. So we work with Michigan. I think that's the question that you were asking, where you're going to move. So it's perfectly possible. The trip is usually very inexpensive. It's a short visit. In one visit, we usually can do all the assessment that we need to do in our intended parents, and we'll coordinate things. Sometimes it's a same-sex couple, sometimes it's an heterosexual couple, and we will coordinate things, or even a single dad. And we can collect the sperm on that day. We can do all the blood assessment with genetic screening on the intended parents. Also, preliminary screening on the woman's side that we need to figure out if there is a fertility there. For the assessment of outside patients and just for the general public, and Mindy, just to fill in a little bit of what Mindy does, is the allocation of a gestational carrier is often outside from our state, and all the coordination. She will do some of the coordination of her cycle outside. She'll do a full screening day with us as we reviewed in the presentation. And we coordinate, our coordinators, which is a vast, extensive, and very professional group, will have designated clinics all around the United States that will facilitate doing the monitoring, the screening, the testing that sometimes is necessary when they become pregnant, to their 12 weeks on gestational carriers, and even on donors when they need to be screened. I hope this answers a little bit of the question.
Dr. Joao de Pino. Dr. Mel Thornton would also like to add something to this, to answer this question. So over to Dr. Thornton, please.
Quickly, but I want to add in because I saw your question earlier that due to medical reasons, your wife may have to undergo a natural cycle IVF process. This also can be done working with a outside facility in Michigan, and then having you come to CT Fertility for the retrieval. However, as far as cost effectiveness, it's sometimes better to bank your embryos in your clinic that you find in Michigan. And then once you have embryos created, and if we're going to be working with a gestational carrier, at that point in time, it's better to send the embryos to CT Fertility so that we can transfer them to the gestational carrier if you're working with the carrier. That may be more cost effective than going back and forth between Michigan and Connecticut for retrievals of a single follicle in the natural cycle.
I'm recovering here a question from earlier from Catherine, because this was directed to Mindy Bergson. Catherine understood that the approximate cost is $100,000 plus hospital costs. How high are these costs approximately? So this question is for Mindy Bergson. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here, but to answer your question, if we have proper insurance in place, the hospital cost should be covered for the surrogate. I could never even guesstimate what hospital costs would be because they're all dependent on the given situation of the baby or the surrogate, the medical condition. So the best way to prevent or mitigate financial costs would be just to have proper insurance in place for both surrogate and for the babies.
Question for you from Daniel. And he's asking, at what point in the process does the agency fee get paid? At which point in the process? Thank you, Mindy.
I have two payments. One is when you decide we're the right fit to work together and you start to engage me, there's a fee due for that matching process, what I call identification of surrogate. And then once the surrogate is actually selected and the match is solidified, then my case management fee becomes due. So the two fees are probably paid within a 2-3 week period.
Mindy, and I can see two questions for attorney Holger Eberlein, one from Maria and one from Johannes. So I will give the floor to Holger so he can answer both of those one after the other. Thank you. Holger.
Yes, thank you. Maria, I'm going to start with your question then. This comment you said, otherwise it won't work. This is the fatherhood that could be challenged. That was only something that I stated. The legal relationship must be established based on German law. So in that case, you need to challenge the fatherhood if the surrogate mother is married. So it doesn't mean you can't take the child to Germany really, it depends where you are treated. There are questions such as visas. If it's, let's say, in the States where you normally don't need a visa, or you might do it elsewhere where visas are mandatory. In the USA, first of all, I tried to establish the Parenthood by the authorities there, the courts there, to be precise, and then there won't be any problem taking the child to Germany. And if not, the worst case scenario must be that it's the surrogate who would take the child to Germany. But you will not be excluded from getting your child to Germany. Now, Johannes, let me just read your question again. No. If the treatment is carried out for you in the United States and you become parent through surrogacy, indeed, there will be no problems in Germany because I assume you will be the biological father or the one who has recognized the fatherhood. Then the German authorities will not pose any problems. So for you living with the child and your long-term legal status in terms of the child, that will not be endangered. So the way you've planned it is absolutely fine. Thank you ever so much.
Actually, one more question for you from Werner. And he's asking what happens to the American nationality when the baby gets the German nationality. So over to you again, Holger. Thank you very much.
Currently, nothing will happen. Currently, we still have the possibility of dual nationality, 2 passports. It will not be a problem. Maybe you've heard what's being discussed in the election campaigns now, so the dual nationality concept is being challenged, but I don't really think that will really be feasible. Currently, I would not let this cause me any headache.
Very much for your answer. I don't know if there is any question that was asked before that we have missed. If we have, please, if you could write it again in the window, or if anybody else has any other question for any of the speakers. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I wanted to let you know also that this webinar has been recorded in both English and German versions, and we will be sending you the links to download those videos so you can watch everything over again. And of course, you have the contact information also on the screen. So if nobody has any questions in this moment, we're going to close the seminar. Okay, so there's a last question here from Maria, and this is for Attorney Eberlein. Thank you.
You can take those mandates, but actively you are not allowed to start the treatment. So anybody who has got a question regarding this can send me, is very welcome to send me those per email. It is quite short at the moment, but please please send me those questions per email. I've got another question from Daniel. That is a question regarding the practicability. Because this has been decided, I would replicate a bid here by California. because otherwise you'll have to deal with grumpy German authorities. But it should not be any problem. But to really cancel out even the last risk, then you should try to replicate it. Thank you very much.
Holger, for that. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we have reached the end of this webinar session. I invite everyone, as Holger said, to contact by email if you have additional questions, or also for Mindy Bergson or for us at City Fertility. Please do reach out to us. And as I said, I will be sending you an email shortly with the link to download the video in German and in English. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation tonight. Have a great evening. Bye-bye now.